Yeah, this is DW, Groethe. Just DW, I guess. That's the best way. And I'm a singer-songwriter. I play guitar. Piano is my primary instrument, I guess. And I've been a ranch hand for, I don't know, on and off the last 30 years. Close enough. That's me. Well, my first vehicle, which wasn't a car, I've never owned a car. I'm proud to say that, too. I've been was a van. It was a 1966 Dodge Slant 6. One of those with a flat front, not a hood. So the engine sat in between you and the passenger
Oh, yeah,
seat.
yeah.
It was great. And see, this is like 1969, about that. And, my hair was down to almost my waist, and I was just, we were what the straight people called hippies, but we called ourselves freaks.
Oh, really?
And long hairs, yeah.
I always thought it was the other way.
No. Heads. We call ourselves heads. Feds and heads. But I got out of that business, somewhere in the early 70s and just sort of went pretty much into music. Anyway, that van, which I decorated out, got a fridge in there and, bed and everything else like that, cabinets. So, yeah, that was a fun vehicle. I had that till, I took it when I went back to school in January of 78, and I had it till that fall when I bought a small pickup. Don't ask me what kind. It was a small pickup. I think it was either Datsun or Toyota. It was Japanese. It was a nice little pickup, and I sold the van to a friend of mine down there, and haven't seen it since. And I've had nothing but pickups since, except for one little van that I still have, even though it's kind of on again, off again, because I got hit by a deer. Honest to God, I was stopped on the highway at night, and because I saw this, it was in December, the first part of December, probably about 6 years ago anyway. And I happened to see, coming from the south, this Highway 2 right out here, a bunch of deer. So I just pulled over on the berm, stopped. It was like 5 or 6 does heading off. And they got down in the ditch, and I thought, okay, everything's fine. So I just put it into gear and was getting ready to move, and wham, I got hit by their buck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's, yeah. So I put it back in the park, and I was going to open the door to get up and dry because I figured he was dead. He hit my driver's side, the door window, with his head. His body flipped up over and smashed the windshield.
Oh, jeez.
And then he rolled over and hit the ground. I thought, well, he's about as dead as they get. And as I opened up the door, he got up, shook his head, and went off. So now I'm in the highway, and I have no witnesses. So I just and the lights were out. He knocked out the electrics. But I'm only like 2 miles from town, so I really didn't care. It was a pretty easy night to see. And so I got it home, and it's been on again ever since. For the pickups, yeah. I'm a pickup guy. I mean, if I got to haul stuff, and you don't want a car.
Yeah, as a musician in band, so a band van was our go-to.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's lots of bands. And most of them had a van. Well, the first band I was in was like in 67. And we played just locally around the Williston area. We were in college. And then I ended up moving in January of 68 to Minot, and we were in a rock and roll band called The Spider. Heck of a good band. We had a van, bought a used, I don't know if it was a U-Haul or whatever, and had it painted with our logo and everything else like that. And drove around that I don't know what ended up with that, because the band together for about a year, and the following January we came back and went to school again. But yeah, I played in bands and done solo work too, folk music and stuff in between. since 1967. My first paying gig was like in August of 67. And somewhere in the early 90s, my picking music, my solo stuff, started picking up. The last band I was in, I think would have been, I remember we were playing a gig over in Culbertson, Montana. And it was last night, it was on Saturday night. And I was playing keyboards, and I had a Yamaha CP70 and a couple of electrics go with it. I mean, synths, that's what I'm talking about. And it just dawned on me that I'd had enough. That was like 30 years of being in a band. And I always had a good time. I always lucked out. I was in with other musicians that were really quality musicians. And never really was in a band, one, but, it turned out retrospectively to be worth the laughs. One band that, one guy wanted to be in charge and nobody else wanted him in charge, but we still stuck together.
Okay.
That kind of thing. Anyway, I looked over at the rhythm player standing next to me, and I said, "Mer, this is my last night in the band." I said, "I'm done." And the rest of the band heard, and they all just kind of laughed. Yeah, sure, you bet. And by Monday, I'd sold everything except that piano, because it was an acoustic electric baby grand, and there aren't many piano players out there in this area.
Yeah.
So I took that over to a music store in Sydney and put it on consignment. It took him about 6 months, and he sold it to a guy who opened up his own little recording studio. I mean, and that's a nice little piano, but at that time I had that piano, I had 2 upright pianos, I had a couple of other keyboards, and I sold everything except for one small amp and my acoustic, of course, my Mossman. Been playing solo ever since. It's great because, and like I mentioned earlier to you when we were just BSing.
Yeah.
That, I don't go in, I don't have to set up, don't have to tear it down like the old song. And I just show up with my guitar.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
traveling,
rule number one, no matter who the sound person is, they're this far from God. You treat them with an enormous amount of respect, because they can make you sound like Donald Duck because most of those gigs, they're outdoor gigs. They're big folk festivals, things like that.
Yeah.
And I don't even take my Mossman on those anymore. That's my existence right there. So I bought another guitar, and that's the one I'll fly with and whatever. Because really, when you're playing outdoors, if you have an electric guitar, if you're a Tele player or a Strat player, like Hendrix, whatever, there's a certain sound you can achieve on stage with your amps. But if you have an acoustic and you're running on a microphone, 9 times out of 10, I can plug in mine in too, your sound is totally controlled by whoever's running the sound. Because you can have, it's not the same as in a small venue when you just have the mic in front of the guitar. And those are my favorite venues, by the way. 200 people, that's more than enough.
Yeah.
Because you can see faces and you can get in there. But if you're outdoors, it's big like that. All they need to hear is the sound of a guitar behind whatever you're singing.
Sure.
Things like that. And that's not bad, because these people, it sounds great. I've never had any complaints. So, am I boring anybody yet? I bore myself.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I guess I'll find out if I get feedback. That was a shitty episode.
What really got me started doing this solo work, there was a group of folklorists in 1985 got together, and they had what's called the National, but then it was called just a Cowboy Poetry Gathering. And I write poetry besides songs, and I've been a poet my whole life. I mean, since I was like in grade school, literally. In 85, they put this thing together, and it was such a success. What they did is they asked, every state generally has a folklorist. And these are people who go around seeing, like in North Dakota, be looking for the Native American crafts, creating stuff with willow, baskets, things like that. And then it would be like the people who keep up the German traditions of their folk songs, music, whatever. Eventually what happened, there was a guy from North Dakota that got invited down there. He came back, and he started it. So there's a Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Medora, and that's Bill Oman is his name. It just kind of rolled on from there. And I found out about it in 92, and I went down there, caught it because a friend of mine was in it. And I thought, well, heck, I do this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So next year I just went down to be in it because there's always open mics. And this year, see, in 2002, I got invited to the 2003 National Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Elko. And this year was the 40th. I've been invited to 21 of them. So I know I'm doing something right in that world.
Yeah, right.
But I have an advantage, too, because I don't do just poetry. I write my own songs, too. Plus, I do, it's called reciting. You do the classic poems by other writers.
Okay.
And same with music, songs. So
sure,
I've got like all sorts of bases covered. But by the same token, I still do old standard folk music that I've done since like the 60s, late 60s when I first learned how to play guitar. Because up until then, it was all piano work. That kind of thing, I mean, it's amazing how, like I said, once I started going out and just grabbing a guitar and didn't have to do anything, I came home one year, well, it was probably, there's the poster right up there, Homegrown 2005.
Oh, yeah.
That's, I got a phone call from the chief folklorist of the Library of Congress. And I can't remember the fellow's name now, but that program, Homegrown, Congress delegated X amount of money every year and said, spend this. They have enough for, I think they run 10 shows, one a month for about 10 months. And folklorists from those various states will put in their, recommendations, things like that. And then I suppose they have a little board down there and they listen to everything and say, okay, let's pick this person or this band and everything. So you can have Cajun music. You look up there, there's all sorts of different kinds of acts. And it's all homegrown stuff. It's so that year I get back from Elko and I get, this is back in the days where you didn't have phones like this. You had an answering machine.
Yeah.
So I was listening to all the different various things that came up, and then this guy comes on and says, hey, my name is so-and-so. He says, I'd like to invite you to play at the Library of Congress. And he said that they said, please give me a call back. So the first thing I thought, because you got to know my friends, yeah, you bet. So I'm trying to think of whose voice that sounds like. It's just like me to call somebody up and do the same thing, change your voice a little bit, that kind of thing. It turns out it's real. So they flew me out there, put me up, and I went out on a Wednesday. The gig, I think, was on a Thursday. I'm kind of guessing now. It's been a while, 20 years. Played the Madison Hall because they were doing some work. The Library of Congress has several different buildings. The Madison one, you go in there, and there's this enormous, I'm assuming marble or some kind of stone statue of James Madison. And he's sitting there, like this, with his hands out, and big old shoes, about 14 feet long, seems like. And that's where they set me up. So I'm standing there.
Oh, yeah.
And they got everybody, this is at 1 o'clock or maybe about 12:30, because the place just filled right up with all these folks who work in Washington, right? And I did a set up there. Oh, this is a side note. So I'm sitting there, I get done. We had a really good time. I'm talking with a couple of folklorists, and they were the ones. One of them was the one that recommended me. I had two different folklorists. Another one was from Washington that wanted me, and that's how I got into this thing. So I got done, and then this group of people came up and started talking to me. And there's a thing called the National Folk Festival. It comes out of Silver Springs, Maryland. And what it does is that cities will put a bid in because they want to start a major folk festival. And so the cities are generally, we were talking, well, this is in Richmond, Virginia, right? And what the National Folk Festival does, those people come in, they're pros at running folk festivals. They come in the first year, and they do like 90% of the work. But you have to have all these people in the community volunteering, and they show them how to run a folk festival, every little detail, right? And the next year there'll be a few less of them, but the people are working together. In the third year there'll still be a couple, I mean, they're helping run the show, but by that time, really, the locals are doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, so they came up and said, this is, I think, their first year. And they invited me to that. So this is like in whatever month that was. And October is when the National Folk Festival was. So I got invited to that at the same time. That was, those things are enormous. I mean, it was in where the South had their armory and where they built stuff and things like that. It's a park. So it's just like enormous. It was just a whole lot of fun. So, I mean, that was really special, big time. But you turn around, the second gig, on getting back to the Library of Congress show, you played the first show at the Library of Congress, and then an evening show, early evening, say, about 6, 7 o'clock, at the Kennedy Center.
Oh.
So, have you ever been in the Kennedy Center?
No.
It's effing enormous.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't just one stage, and I think there's 5 or 7 different stages. There's a really big one you see on TV where everybody's awarded.
Yeah.
And but there's a lot of smaller areas, venues. And if you walk in, there's this long hallway. It's enormous. The roof goes on until who knows where. And at the very end, there's the right and the left, and there's stages on the right and the left on the end of the tees. And I played, they're called the Millennial Stages. And I sat up there. I mean, that was just a grand experience. I get up there, and I'm talking back and forth with the workers there, and we're having a pretty good time. Because it doesn't take much for a sound check for me. They were setting up, I think, 200 or 250 chairs, because that's what they generally get, people coming in. It was free to the public. That's one of the keynotes about this thing.
Yeah, I see that.
So they set up, and then they start setting up. And by the time they got done, there was like 500 chairs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was really great. I mean, not saying I'm a star or anything like that, but it turns out Cowboy from Montana really sells.
Yeah.
It could have been anybody. Well, maybe not anybody, but you know what I mean. And the number of people I knew there was phenomenal that worked in that area, worked for the government. I didn't know, Well, I know one of them would show up. The guy I worked for, you drive up to the Highway 2, and you're going to take a right. That land that's in front of you, a mile this way and a mile to the west, that's the beginning of his property. And it goes north for a long time. And that's the ranch I worked on.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway, his uncle is there, who's a friend of mine. I'd forgotten he lived out there. So, I with him. I have a first cousin of mine that, Aunt Ina, my dad's sister, and I don't know if you ever knew her.
No.
Ina and Joe. There was one of their sons was out there, and his son. So it was just, I had those friends, and then all of a sudden there's all these other people who are from Montana. I said, we're from Montana too. So we had a grand old time. This is after the show was over. And I remember saying, this sounds boring to anybody but me, but about towards the end of the set, I think it was supposed to be an hour, and since nobody was following me, I have a feeling I might have gone longer. I do that sometimes.
Yeah, why not?
Well, if you're having fun.
Yeah.
And if the audience is having fun. But anyway, it dawned on me, okay, I'm going to fly home. I think I flew home the next day, and I think it was a Friday. Because I remember saying to the crowd, I said, you know what's neat about this? Right now I'm sitting here playing for you. I'm in the Kennedy Center, and Friday I'll be raking hay.
Yeah.
And they all kind of looked at me, and I knew some of the farmer ranchers that were out there, and they just grinned and they started laughing because he said, yeah, you're exactly right. That's just it, because that never quits, And I was, and I could take you out to the very little plot that I was raking that day.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it, because I'm sitting on the old, I think it was the 4020 we were using, and that's a tractor. out there raking. And it just dawned on me then, I'm going around, and I love raking hay because it's just, the smell is great. And I just, I like raking hay. I started laughing to myself because, here I am. It's 48 hours later and I'm raking hay. And, 48 hours before I'm Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center.
That's amazing.
I've always been a musician.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, your gram.
Yeah.
This is after my dad passed. And I'd get over there fairly often, more often than I did before. And we'd talk, and she'd tell me those stories that I never heard before. But one of them was, she said, I started asking for a piano when I was 4. I never knew that,
Mm-hmm.
I was in 2nd grade, I think. I mean, we couldn't afford one. I mean, we weren't poor or anything like that, but it was just like, they got 4 kids, and my dad was working solo at the time. He was working for the county highway department. I was shopping she took me to go shopping at the co-op store for groceries and stuff like that. And we got to the line checkout, and evidently the clerk said, oh, here, sign up over here. So my mom goes over and signs up, and I said, what are you signing up for? This is her talking, I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, oh, you see that car out there? And it was a used car, but it was a nice car. And it was just filled with stuff. Plus if you won that, you won that. It was technically full of groceries, but you got meat, and that was still in the cooler, of course, and everything like that. And there's a push cart in there. I've still got it. It's in the back shed. I can't get rid of it. I think of my piano every time I see it, because she said I knew that we didn't have enough money for the piano. She said, but if I win this, I'll buy you a piano, because we had our own car and my dad had the work car. I said, oh, okay. I guess that settled me down. She said, whatever it was, a month later, whenever they did the drawing, gets a phone call, and she have a hard time with this. But anyway, she said, the phone rang, and it was the co-op store saying that I'd won. And she said, Harold looked at me and goes, who is that? She goes, well, it's the store. I won that car full of groceries. And she said, I looked at your face, and I knew you had a piano.
Yeah.
And it is. And so from 2nd grade on till I got out of high school, I don't think I missed 2 or 3 lessons, because it was just in me.
Yeah.
I had mumps, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's luck for you, too. You get down in Elko, there's one room convention center, holds about 2,000 people. And I played that. I've never done a solo show there, but it'll be like 3 people, all turning around. And 2,000 people, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot, yeah.
It's not like, and at and some of those folk festivals, it's like the Woodstock kind of a venue. It's all the hillside going up like that. I have no idea how many people are there, but it's like, you don't want to buy a round. Oh, no, not today. But down in Elko, at the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering, they have a small theater that holds 150, maybe 200, I don't know. And it's just real intimate. You can sit up and you can just look around. You can see everybody, and you're just one with the crowd.
Yeah.
And that's the way I like to pick.
Mm-hmm.
And I like sitting, too. I like a tall stool. Well, you know me. I've got long legs, and it's just nice to sit on. And it's more comfortable. And I think it relaxes with the audience, too. If you're sitting. If you're standing there, and a lot of places, especially the outdoor gigs, things you just go on stage and you stand there for however long, 45. I think I did one that was an hour 20, which isn't bad. I mean, some people would probably think it's highly unfortunate, but if I had to go on for 3 hours, I could do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. Because I got a ton of poems and a ton of songs.
You still performing?
Not so much. COVID really put a kibosh on everybody.
It did, yeah.
And that first year of COVID, I played 2 gigs. I played Elko, and I did one in Dickinson for the, I don't know if it was the Cattleman's Outfit or what it was. It was a fun little gig. I remember that. And that was the last gig I had for a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, that was the last time first time I hadn't had a professional gig in a year since 1966.
Oh.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then it just sort of picked up a little bit, but you know what? I'm 75. I've been doing this pretty much my whole life. Even before, when I was in high school, junior high, whatever like that, I was doing little shows and stuff like, you're in school stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one way or another, I'd be playing piano for somebody. So it's just something I do. And I finally, I think last year I did Elko, of course. And I did 2 others, 2 freebies in Williston. One was for Art in the Park thing. That, oddly enough, I started that gig back in the late 80s when I was still living in Williston, and we got together with a group of people that we were making the James Memorial Library into an art space.
Oh, cool.
But, I mean, those people didn't know it because, that was like damn near 40 years ago. But it was kind of interesting to go in there, and what happened is one of the gals that works there, that's part of it, knows me. I've done shows for her in the past. So she had a couple people quit. There's always live music going on. And she had a couple people who couldn't show up, and she asked me if I'd show up. I said, no problem. So I showed up and did that. Actually, I got $50 for it. It surprised me because I was doing it for nothing. And then the other one was for Veterans Day. And I went in and helped with a show there. You don't charge for that kind of thing.
Right.
Ever. And the year before, I think I had 4 gigs. And they were nice because they were all in cattle towns. Swafford City, Medora, and Miles City. Because what I do, that's where it really sells.
Oh, yeah, I suppose.
Because everybody knows what I'm going to say here, but you have your own jargon. The stuff, there are things I can say to some, a cattleman or woman, it doesn't matter, cattle people, that would make perfect sense to both of us. And then I would say it to you, and you would look at me like, do you need help? It's just it. I've written poems. I have a friend of mine who's a rancher down in South Dakota, Robert Dennis. This is years ago. He and I were talking about it, and he writes poetry, and he does some songs. And we were talking about, there are poems I do that and they're really funny poems, but they're not to city people who have no idea what hay is, let alone anything else.
Right.
And he says, here's what I do. Now, most of the people that listen to this podcast are going to roll their eyeballs and say, what? But there's going to be somebody out there who's on a ranch, and they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. He said he gets up on stage, and they always clap when you get on, and he's in front of the mic, and he said, very quietly, I lean into the mic, and I say, prolapse. And he said, if I hear a lot of snickering going on, I know I got a ranchy outfit. Because they know. And everybody else is going, why would you say something so like that? That's unfortunately our kind of sense of humor. And I've tried it, and it works.
When you were flying with your guitar, how do you travel with that? You don't store it in checking, right?
Well, I have. The first time I traveled with it was out east. It was to the National in Richmond, Virginia. I had it, and I bought a hard shell case. Serious, you see my guitar case. It's the original hard shell case from 1976, which was nice for back then. But the one I got now is one of those armor ones you could drive a tank over,
Oh, nice.
So anyway, I check it, and because they wouldn't let me take it on, I wanted to gate check it. For some reason, sometimes they won't let you do that, which just offends me deeply.
Yeah.
But anyway, you got to remember, this is a 1976 Mossman, Stuart Mossman, handmade, and I've had it for, next year it'll be 50 years. And this thing is just like my guitar, and it's just a beautiful sound. It's just, I don't exist without it. Anyway, so I get in, I check it, and I fly out of Minot, from Minot to the cities, St. Paul, and then from there to Pittsburgh, I think it was. It was in Pennsylvania. And from there, Richmond. So get there, and it's a National Folk Festival, and there's all sorts of folky people getting off the planes and stuff, and we're all standing around carousel waiting for stuff, and my bag comes around, and I wait, no guitar. I have this fellow standing there, he was with a klezmer band. Heck of a good guy. He knew I was looking for my guitar, and it didn't come in. And he goes, "This is an outrage." He was really getting excited, way more excited than me. So we go over to the baggage claims area, and I said, "I need to get something signed. My guitar wasn't in this." He says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, fill out here exactly what it is." And so I did all that. They had buses for us, small van buses, take us down to, I think it was a Radisson. Doesn't matter. Anyway, we get there, and when you walk through the front door, okay, now there was a hurricane had just passed offshore. So it was like drizzly and kind of like that, but it was like way offshore, so it wasn't windy or anything. It was just like kind of weather. But, they had that portico over the front so you could drive underneath it. And then the doors, he'd left it open because it was hot and muggy. And when you walk through those doors, on the left is where all the counter work was done, if you was signing in for a room. And straight ahead was these old swinging doors you see in the bars.
Yeah.
In a lot of Westerns. I walked just straight through there, sat down, and ordered a double shot of Jack, a little bit of ice. And I was sitting, oh yeah, that's another thing. So I get this Jack, and it's like, I'm assuming it's going to be more spendy than, say, in Bayonville was back then, but just making up numbers to get the point across. If you bought a double shot down here back then, say, it would have been $6, $3 a shot, that kind of thing. I go in there, and it comes out to, and I'm not kidding, this won't be the right number, but it's going to be a number like it, $8.47. I look at the bartender, and she goes, "I get that look a lot." I go, "What is it?" She goes, "We have state tax, we have county tax, we have city tax, and then there's something else on there, so they have to figure it in,
Oh.
So anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm sipping and talking to a couple other musicians who are there, and you can see over the the doors at the front door, and I see my guitar coming, a fella carrying it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah. So I got up, I just walked straight through, and I know I must have been grinning. And this gentleman said, may I assume, yeah, just perfect. He said, "May I assume that this is yours?" And I said, "You may assume so." And he was grinning, I was grinning. He gave it to me. He said, "Please sign here." And that was it. I gave it back. When I came back, I went down to the music store in Sydney, and I bought that Ibanez Artwood.
Uh-huh.
And that's the one I fly with.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so,
after that,
and it was like $400 back then. It was a good medium price guitar. Has a nice sound, easy to play.
So after that scare, you're like, I'm never gonna.
Oh, I don't fly with that one. It's just, it rides with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine trying to go through that. And I've seen how they the baggage handlers just chuck bags into the plane or
a lot of
back
them do.
out.
But I've seen a lot of them that really are. They're up front. They treat things with respect, and they go like this. But you're going to have, somebody's going to have a bad day, and away it goes.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a fellow I know out of California that part of it actually plays a squeeze box, a small accordion thing. And he was going to a gig someplace, I can't remember where. But anyway, he says as the plane was starting to move back, he looked over and he saw his accordion case sitting on the goddamn tarmac.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they left without it.
Oh,
because
no.
he couldn't stop the dang plane.
Yeah.
So he had to tell, I suppose, a stewardess or whoever who got a hold of whoever to call in and say, Sourdough Slim is his name. He's really great people, good entertainer. He ended up getting it back.
They just sent it on like the next plane, maybe? Yeah.
More than likely.
So why ranch hand? You just gravitate toward that?
Yeah, pretty much. Because I came out here like April of 91. And I was working at a job in Williston doing some ads, radio stuff. And then the radio station got stalled, and I really didn't want to hang around Williston. And I ended up coming out here, worked as a bartender for a short bit, ended up going over and getting a fellow used to drop in there, and he owned a feed processing plant in Culbertson called CB&F. It was a big mill. I mean, we'd make tons of feed every day, pellets and whatnot, do blocks. He said, why don't you give it a try? And I said, okay. So I worked there for about 3 years, and it ended up getting, he sold it. I didn't really care for the people that owned it. It was a big mega company. It was. I don't care for that company to this day. I could mention it, but they're the kind that sue you.
Yeah.
I mean, but they're big, and they own a phenomenal amount of the American egg industry.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, during that time, the last couple of years, all my friends out here, they're either farmers or they're ranchers or they're both. They're always needing help. That's one thing about those, you need help moving cows. You need help moving a tractor because somebody has to drive a pickup so you can go back and forth, all the other stuff.
Oh, sure.
And eventually that's what it worked out. When I quit over there, I ended up going to work for a fella for about 3 years, and then his kids kind of came back. I just sort of ended up working for Dave Granley, which is right up north there, and I was there full-time for, 16, 17 years, and started pulling back a little bit. I still go out there and give them a hand, though, on occasion, because, there's always fencing to do, and, that's, of course, most people, unless you've been fencing, you don't know what I'm talking about, but it's work.
Yeah.
But I really like it. Because it's one of those things that nobody ever volunteers to go with you. So you're going by yourself.
Uh-huh.
And and I'm one of those people that, I spend time by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind my own company. I get in an argument with myself, I always win, and I take the other guy to the bar. So, we have a drink, it's over. It's fine.
Driving around past ranches and whatnot, and you'll see some of the fence lines. There'll be like boots on posts. Is that significant for anything?
Not around here. I've seen that too. I've heard everything from, well, you just put it out there because maybe the post is rotting a little bit on top and it'll protect it. And then I've also heard that, well, that belonged to so-and-so who was out here and he had this ranch, and it's sort of a memory keepsake thing. I don't know anybody around here that's done that. If you drive around here, you don't really see it.
Right.
And I got nothing against it. It's fine by me.
I was just wondering, it seemed silly, but maybe significant.
If anybody went through my boots collection, because there's some of them that deserve to be out there, but I refuse to get rid of them because sooner or later I'm going to find somebody that'll fix them for me. That's, everybody brags up having a boom. And this is boom bust country. The first one I went through was in the 50s, and this was like the fifth one, I think. This one was the worst because it got rid of all the music stores, moved out, all the bootmakers, repair shops.
Oh, sure.
They're gone. In fact, the guy that used to do mine, I can't think of his name now. He and his wife moved to Bismarck, and I think he's reopened his shop, and I've seriously considered getting online or some way or another, finding him and said, I'm going to start mailing you a pair a month.
Yeah.
Just mail them back to me because this guy does grand work. It isn't just that. Now that I'm on this little tirade about all the negative sides of a boom, you can get, and it isn't the people. The people come in, I don't care. 99% of them are really great people. It's the businesses they buy up because the land gets so spendy.
Yeah.
And the oil companies, and they, why not? They buy it because they need someplace to store stuff and do whatever. Well, that means all the wrecking yards are gone too. So you try and find a used part, you ain't gonna do it.
Okay.
It's little things that just add up after a while. You go, whoa. One of the downsides for that.
Yeah.
Other than that, then there's a lot of money involved. When we play gigs, I could do a solo gig like I can get paid an outrageous. Of course, when I went to full-time solo gigging, I was making as much as the band made, and I wasn't asking for it. I just, they say, are you going to be free this day, wherever it was? And I would say, well, I'd like to have my travel covered, and a place to stay. And then they would quote this phenomenal price, and I go, To myself, I go, I'd have done over half that.
Yeah, right. You don't want to let them know.
Okay. Yeah, I think I could probably do that. Yeah. Well,
You got a website?
nope. As a matter of fact, my computer froze up about 2 years ago, and I thought, I do everything on my phone anyway.
Yeah.
So I haven't. It's not. I don't think it's been plugged in the whole time. Finally, and the top computer is one that a friend gave me back about that time, 2005 or so, because she upgraded. She had a website back then called cowboypoetry.com, and she gave me that one. And that's the only stuff that's on that is like for Elko. I'll give them an idea about doing a show, and put together the script, everything, write that, and basically I'm the director. I have a degree in theater, a Bachelor of Fine Arts as a director. So that's another way I end up getting invited out there. Just in Elko, you're either invited as a singer, performer, or a poet, or a folklorist, or if you write a show. So there were times I've been out there that, because I've done a lot of shows for them, had a lot of fun doing it. And the scripts are on that one, along with if I get done writing a poem, like book's almost filled, I got to get another one. This is the rough draft book. Underneath the book that's right over there, if you lift that one up, it says wisdom. Okay, that's the secondary draft. I'll put them in there, the ones I think, okay, I can keep this, and I work that out. And then I'll put them on that. That's where I kind of get my final draft. Even though when you write a poem, songs are the same way, but poems are really bad for this. They're never done. You can get them to the 95th percentile, and 10 years down the road, you think, it's not how I used to do that. Because they're just never done.
Yeah.
You can't finish. Same, it applies to painting, any kind of art form. I was doing a gig in Fargo one time, and a friend of mine had a show up in one of those restaurants that has, he's a visual artist, painter, sculptor. It's one of those restaurants that kind of is an art venue at the same time.
Okay.
So they'll have, an artist in, and then the special nights for whatever. And we're going around looking at all these various paintings he's done. And he looks at this one, we stop, and he kind of puts his left hand to his chin, and he points a little bit with his right hand. He says, it could use a little more red right down here.
Yeah.
You're never done.
Yeah.
I mean, a piece is never done. As close as it gets to being done is when I call it throwing it to the wolves. When I finally publish a poem, it's no longer mine. Okay, it belongs out there. It has its own life. And when people ask me, what was the reason you wrote this poem? I rarely, and generally speaking, never say why. Because that ain't the point. The point is, what's this poem going to do for you? Go on cowboypoetry.com or westernfolklifecenter.org in Elko. They got a ton of stuff.
Cool.
I don't remember ever bringing myself up on a web. I've never looked myself up.
Right. Yeah.
I have. I mean, I already know what happened. So what's the big deal? But I know it's out there because I've had people come up to me. Yeah, I was going through and this being on their phone, they're going through like YouTube or whatever, and you popped up. I go, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So yeah, I'm out there.
Yeah, it's out there.
All over the place, I guess.
Nice.
It's kind of weird, really.
Yeah, I found some of your albums at the library.
Really?
Yeah, and I checked those out, and then I never returned them, and basically stole them, but I paid for them in the end. Because I went back to get a book, and they're like, "Oh, you have this." All you had to do is
call me. I'd just give them to you.
Well, this was before, yeah. And then when I saw you at, I think it was Folk Fest in Cross Ranch.
Oh, that was it's a folk fest, but it's the bluegrass.
Oh, that's right.
Yep. I remember that. Yeah.
And then I got some of your other albums.
Yeah.
The other ones I didn't have, and the poetry and.
I don't write much music. I write it, but I don't do it with any intent of recording. I'll put it that way, because if you're going to sell their stuff, you have to go out. I suppose there's people that really sell a lot of it online, but really when you do what I do, the folk act, the time for the hottest sale is right after the gig.
Yeah.
And you're out there at the table and you see like people come up and talk with you and you have a good time. And
right.
That's really where it's at. And if I'm not doing that much anymore, there's no point in recording. I got 2 books left. One of them's already done. Actually, it's over here somewhere. Right there.
Yeah.
It's my Christmas poems.
Yeah.
With a picture of the cards I do.
Yep.
We ain't call
I love your penmanship.
We don't call it. Yeah, well, I do too. Except if I invariably make a mistake. Because I write fairly swiftly, but my brain is always thinking ahead.
Sure.
So I did that this year for a friend of mine. I wrote a poem for her. And her last name starts M-E-T-E, Metagano. And I didn't notice until I got it all done. Things I have to send it off. I always take a picture of poems that I know I don't have a hard copy of, right? So then I got it on my phone. And I looked at it and I'd spelled it M-E-T-A-G instead of M-E-T-E-G because I'm thinking G-R-A. That's where my brain is.
Yeah.
All 4 letters ahead. So I sent her a message saying, I have to apologize. And she kind of knows I got this, not a problem. Well, I suppose you could call it a problem, but it's just that's the way I print. And I'm always just a few letters ahead.
Yeah.
And so I always have a mistake or two. And as long as just 1 or 2, then I'll live with it. Because you get cards on occasion, I think. If you look through them, you'll find a letter that's kind of smeared over or something like that because I screwed up.
Yeah, it looks cool, though. It's like your own unique font. I love it.
I actually had she wasn't an English teacher. She was a computer teacher up here. But she said that one time. She says, I wouldn't mind making a font of that. And I said, well,
right.
Go ahead if you want.
Wonder if she did.
I don't think so. She's an old friend of mine. She's actually a classmate of mine. She taught here. She retired several years ago now. This would have been probably about 20 years ago when she thought of this.
What would you call it?
No idea. But it is. I know it's unique, and I like it. I mean, I can read it. My cursive was. I would have had to been a doctor.
Oh yeah.
The jokes about you can't read their penmanship.
Yeah, that's how my wife writes.
Oh, jeez.
She has a hard time reading her own handwriting too. The other day, I came across one of her notes, and I'm like, what is this? And she stared at it for a few minutes. And then she's like, oh, I think it says this.
I think. Right in front of it, I think. I have a friend of mine here. She's 81, going to be 82. And so I, help her with her shopping and whatnot. And she writes out. I finally got her to the point. I couldn't read anything at first. And it's not because she's shaky or anything like that. She just has really sloppy handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've got her to the point where actually when she makes out her list, I can read 99% of it. There used to be one word where it was only 5 letters, and the only one that made sense was the first one, yogurt, which actually has 6 letters, but she only had 5 down there. And when she finally told me what it was, I kind of saw the T at the end, sort of. And
Yeah.
But that's really, and I've been printing since I was in high school. I don't even think they teach cursive anymore, do they?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think there's got to be a certain age, maybe even below 30, that couldn't even read it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that.
Thank you for the coffee.
Oh, yeah, any old
conversation.
time. Thanks for dropping by. Jeez, I don't see many relatives anymore.
Yeah.
Most of them have divorced me, and rightfully so. I apologize if I offended anybody. That actually doesn't bother me if I did.